Okay, so here we are with another. Well, it's really the first of our Mcfarlane Super Friends unboxings, and this is the Riddler. Why am I starting with the Riddler? Well, the last episode of the unboxings, I opened up this Riddler figure, and the episode before that, I opened up the figure of Jim Carrey and from Batman Forever in the final suit. So that was the other Riddler figure that I might as well just keep opening Riddler figures as long as I got them. And this is the third and final one that I have. And then after that, I've got the whole rest of this first wave. So I've got Lex Luthor, I've got Green Lantern, I've got Sinestro, and I've got both the regular version of Batman, the heroic Super Friends version of Batman, and from the universe of evil, I have the Super Enemies Batman in his red costume. So we're going to have some fun with these. For those of you who don't know, Super Friends, I figured like a lot of people my age, and I'm pretty old. Like a lot of people my age, Super Friends would have been my first exposure to superheroes, and that's how I got obsessed with all this crap. So yeah, the credit and or blame goes to them. The Riddler appeared during Challenge of the Super Friends. I think he might have had like one or two other episodes that he was in that weren't part of Challenge, but mainly he was on Challenge of the Super Friends as a member of the Legion of Doom. And this does reuse a lot of parts. This line is spun off from Batman 66, which is appropriate because Adam West did do the voice of Batman in the last couple of seasons of Super Friends. But it does reuse a lot of parts from the Frank Gorshin Riddler figure, as did the Filmation Riddler figure. So we will be comparing with this one in the Frank Gorshin figure. So anyway, here's what the back looks like. And that's a lovely piece of artwork by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. What it come from the style guide. Got the Super Friends logo that we remember from the cartoon series in the first season. It showed the Super Friends logo with all the characters standing on top of it. And then we have Super Friends logo on the front with the kind of rainbow background that first season opening had. And you can see they placed our heroes on top of the logo. They're not standing on it like they were in the animated opening. They're kind of running towards us. And this piece of artwork, I believe, is by Dick Giordano. It looks like it's by him. It's from before Garcia Lopez was doing the style guides. But you can see it has a lot of characters on both of these pieces that were never on the Super Friends cartoon, like Shazam, Supergirl, Red Tornado, Black Canary, Mary Marvel, Raven, Changeling, so a lot of Wonder Girl, Batgirl, a lot of characters that were not on the animated show. On the front, you see Batgirl and Supergirl. Green Arrow was on like one episode in the first season. Bobby Wald says it's almost like whoever wrote it, whoever wore it, didn't need. Sorry, it's almost as who wore it better, and I don't need to add the question mark since they already have it. It's almost, I see, it's almost like a who wore it better. Yeah, that's yeah, because like I said, we'll get more into talking about what parts they share. There are some more new parts on this figure, which I think is nice. But I do think that these are appropriate pieces of art because even though they're not really from the Super Friends cartoon, but this was artwork that you would have seen on a lot of merchandise in the late 70s and early 1980s. I remember having some comic books from Lionel Playworld where it was basically like, I guess they took like three comics without a cover, probably just grabbed like three random comics that were hot off the press at the time, whatever comics they were publishing during that batch, stapled them all together with a new cover wrapped around it, and the piece of artwork on those was pretty similar to this one, if it wasn't the exact same piece of artwork. I remember the thing that I thought was strange about that was it would oftentimes show Superboy with the group of characters, And I was really confused by this. I'm like, why is Superman on here twice? And my mom said, oh, well, that's not Superman. That's Superboy. And I'm like, Superboy is Superman. He's just like a younger version of Superman. So how are they coexisting? That doesn't you see. So on the Super Friends cartoon. Oh, and you can see that this is kind of funny. So this one is just the Super Friends logo. This one is the Super Friends logo with an exclamation point on it, which we did oftentimes see on some of the merchandise. They'd put an exclamation point on there. But yeah, the Riddler on Challenge of the Super Friends was voiced by Michael Bell, who this was not the only character that he'd done on Super Friends. Notably, probably his most notable character that he did on Super Friends would have been Zan of the Wonder Twins, and did a lot of voices in animation over the years. Like I remember he was the voice of Bruce Banner in that early 1980s Incredible Hulk cartoon. You know, the one where he transformed back into Banner and his clothes would grow back. Probably saved Dr. Banner from answering a lot of questions he'd rather not. Michael Bell was most famous. Bobby Wald actually just pointed this out. Bobby, probably the role I associate most with him, of course, being a big G.I. Joe fan, is he was Duke on G.I. Joe. So, and he did a lot of other character voices on G.I. Joe also, but Duke would have been the most prominent one. So he was Major Blood. That was another one that he did. So he got to do a good guy and a bad guy. He did, like I said, a few other characters too. But those are the main ones that come to mind for me right now. So anyway, yeah, he was the voice of the Riddler on Super Friends. So and another appearance is worth pointing out that I remember him from is the very first episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. He plays Groppler Zorn, I think was the character's name. Encounter at Farpoint, that episode. So he did some live action appearances too. Recently, I think it was Chicken Fried Toys with their Dime Novel Legends. They did an action figure that was sculpted to look like Michael Bell, and the uniform he was wearing was kind of similar to what Duke wore. So that's nice. Anyway, let's go ahead and open this guy up because I want to go ahead and get into talking about some of the stuff that comes with him. And it seems like the glue is kind of light on some parts of this package, but a little heavier on others. But the package is coming off very easily. So be careful of that if you're wanting to keep this guy on the card. And speaking of cards, he has a trading card. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. And this actually is a piece of artwork based on the Super Friends cartoon. In the very first episode, when we first see the Riddler, he has this stack of cards that he fans out with pictures of the various Super Friends on them, and then he sets them on fire. So they just kind of like almost like magic, not like with a match, but they just catch him on fire in his hands. But one thing that's interesting about him is you can see one of the cards is Gleek, but Gleek actually, I don't believe, ever appeared on Challenge of the Super Friends. Gleek didn't appear. The Wonder Twins didn't appear. They were exclusive to the standard Super Friends cartoons. There were some new half-hour Super Friends cartoons made at the same time as Challenge, I believe. And those were put out on DVD as Super Friends Season 2. So if you have that set where it's in the same trade dress as the regular Challenge of the Super Friends DVD set, but it's blue instead of that kind of burgundy color. But those are the episodes that were the other half hour of the Challenge of the Super Friends broadcast. So... and that was with just kind of like the 5 main Super Friends, which would have been, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Robin, and Aquaman. I feel kind of bad putting Aquaman after Robin like that, but you kind of want to say Batman and Robin together. That's just kind of how that works. It wouldn't sound right if I said Batman, Aquaman, and Robin. That's weird. So anyway, he had a single one of these double rubber tabs around his belt, and that's unfortunate for reasons I'm going to get into as soon as I get him out of the package. He is barely embedded in the package, but you can see, like, you can probably see it on the camera even. There's like a little bit of oily residue there, like some kind of chemical reaction from that rubber tab and the plastic on the belt. I'm able to rub it off. Let's see. Let me use my sleeve and make sure I get it good, because I don't want. I know there's a little bit of oil on his shoulder. Man, that's weird. But anyway, yeah, there he is out of the package. Let's go ahead and talk about the accessories that he comes with. So he comes with this communication device, this little Legion of Doom walkie-talkie, and he comes with this blaster that you can see that this is kind of supposed to be kind of like a vaguely question mark shaped blaster. See if I hold it next to the question mark on his chest. You can kind of see that, right? And even the way the barrel is, it almost kind of works almost like a dot on there. But since it's a little more angular, it almost looks kind of like a number 7. But I get what they were going for, so Anyway, that's the accessories that he comes with. So let's go ahead and have a look at the figure itself. Now, they did sculpt brand new legs for him. Lone Dragon is here. Yeah, he comes with a number 7. So that's not my favorite thing to get at the Mexican restaurant, the number 7. I prefer the number 18, but the number 7's all right. But yeah, he reuses a lot of parts from the Frank Gorshin figure. Obviously, the head is different, and you can see that the forearms are different because he has the longer gloves like the Riddler had in the cartoon. And then they resculpted his lower legs, but they did something wrong. And does anyone out there see what they did wrong with this figure? I'll give you guys a few minutes to guess, and then I'll just say but maybe somebody can catch that out there in the audience. But you can see that whereas Frank Gorshin had the loafers sculpted on, and that carried over into the Filmation figure. They didn't bother to change it for the Filmation figure, but they did sculpt this one to just have just plain shins. And I've got to imagine that part of the reason that they did that is because they're probably intending on using these lower legs for other characters too. You need to ask that question in the form of a riddle. Well, let me think. Why was the Canadian wearing a very tall shoe? Because it's a boot. Yeah, he's got boots, and he's not sculpted with boots. These are just kind of plain, smooth, sculpted lower legs. They don't have like any kind of seam on there for a boot, but the Riddler's not supposed to have boots. He's supposed to just have like just plain tights, and you can kind of see. You don't have to see his whole feet in the picture, but you can kind of see that here. He doesn't have any boot tops, so he's supposed to. You can go on the Google and check for yourself. Just do a Google image search of like Super Friends Riddler, and you can see that in the model sheets he's not wearing boots. So they gave him an extra paint application for something he's not even really supposed to have. He's got boots that he's not supposed to have. And it's weird because really this is a very accurate sculpt of the Riddler besides that. And it's a really accurate paint job. Like the colors, I feel like match up really well to the way the colors were on the cartoon. The head sculpt is really good. It really does look a lot like the way the Riddler was drawn on the cartoon. You can see for yourself. He's got that same sort of thing where like the hair is kind of pointy in the back. I kind of wonder if maybe that was one of the inspirations for the way they did the Riddler's hair at the end of Batman Forever. Lone Dragon says, and Hasbro couldn't paint Jean's boots on. Yeah. So one character got too many boots, and one character got not enough boots. So other than the fact that he's got boots that he's not supposed to have, it's still like a really nice looking figure. And look at this. They even put the question mark on the back, which is something that they neglected to do with the Frank Gorshin figure. He should have had a question mark on the back. He also should have a seam for the zipper, but I'll forgive him for that. But really, he should have had that question mark. That's too bad. He's also, now that I look at it, I didn't notice before, but he's also missing his question marks around the wrists. He's supposed to have some question marks around the wrists. Uh, it's kind of funny that of all these Riddler figures, two of them were based on animation, and one of them was based on the live action show, and none of them had the proper amount of question marks on there, really, because the Riddler's supposed to have like question marks all over his outfit, and I can kind of forgive that of like an animated version because obviously they'd have to be animating those question marks on every single cell, and I could see how that'd get annoying. But they probably could have fit more question marks onto a suit in the live action. They only had to do that once. Now, if you've ever seen the Hanna-Barbera special Legends of the Superheroes, where Frank Gorshin reprises the role of the Riddler, comes back again and plays the character again. That one does actually have a slightly more comic book accurate suit with darker purple, kind of closer to how he looked on Super Friends, and the additional question marks that he did not have on the original show. So that's kind of interesting. Maybe one day Mcfarlane. I doubt they're going to have time to do it now, but maybe they could do some Legends of the Superhero figures and give us a Frank Gorshin and that out, just to kind of repaint this one. I think that'd be fun. Or they could reuse the forearms from this one since he had the longer gloves on that. And I can't tell whether or not, man, so that oil is like all in his joints. So I think maybe they put it into his joints, like to make sure the joints didn't stick too much. And then it kind of somehow dribbled off of the joint and onto the rubber band. And that's how that residue got on there. So it's not a chemical reaction like I was worried it might be before, but still, that's kind of messy. So So yeah, it is nice that because they didn't have to do that. Like they could have just done like they did with the Filmation Riddler and kept him with the short gloves and the loafers, but they went that extra mile and gave him more accurate sculpts for the forearms and the lower legs. But then they painted the lower legs wrong. Oh well. Let's go ahead and talk about the articulation. So the Riddler can look up about that far, look down about that far, tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side, rotate the head all the way around. Of course, he rotates all the way around his shoulders. And the way the shoulders flare out, it does kind of interfere with that a little bit. And man, there's more of that oil. They need to cut down on that oil. The arms raise up to the sides about that far. As is typical with this style of figure, he's got a single joint of articulation at the elbow that rotates all the way around, and then the arms rotate all the way around to the wrists. These aren't quite as well articulated as the multiverse figures, but they're better articulated than the superpowers figures. It's like, kind of splits the difference between two of them. Technically, these are supposed to be retro figures, but I find it kind of odd that they have a series of retro figures that are 6 inches, because we didn't really have 6-inch figures back in the old days. That 6-inch figures didn't really become a thing until like around the turn of the century, around the time of the millennium, and that was when Toy Biz and Mcfarlane started experimenting with the 6-inch figures, and Marvel Legends was really the thing that made that. Lone Dragon says there's an oil surplus because Diddy ain't been buying it lately. yeah, I figured that was a spell check thing. That damn autocorrect. That happens to me all the time, man. But the funny thing is, even when I read it, I knew that meant Diddy. Knew exactly what you were talking about. Anyway, so he rotates all the way around the waist, although this one, it was kind of sticking at first, but it loosened up. Riddler can kick up about that far, kick back about that far. Again, this is fairly typical for this line of figures. This is about the range of motion you usually get at the the hips on that. He's got a single joint of articulation at the knee that bends about that far and rotates all the way around. No more articulation after that, no ankle articulation whatsoever. But, a decently articulated figure, but not up to the usual Mcfarlane standards. And I should point out also that the Riddler has one gripping hand and one solid fist hand. So that means, even though he comes with two accessories, he can only hold one at the time. So let's go ahead and have a look at what he looks like holding those accessories. First, we'll fit the communicator into his hand, so he can call back to the Hall of Doom and let him know he needs to be picked up. Like back in the earlier days of the internet, there was a website called Sean Baby. It's probably still out there. And I liked his article that he wrote about the Riddler, where he said that like the Riddler is basically like an ordinary guy who's easier to catch. And they had he made like a little comic strip where the Legion of Doom was meeting, and they were like, yeah, we can't tell the Riddler about this because he'll tell the Super Friends. He'll make up some stupid clue and send it to them. And the Riddler comes into the Hall of Doom, and he's like, "Hi guys, sorry I'm late. Somebody locked the doors to my quarters from the outside. So what I miss?" And somebody, I think it's like Luther, whoever, says, "We were planning your surprise party." And the Riddler's like, "Cool, I'll go tell the Super Friends and the police." Yeah. Poor old Edward Nygma. Like, by the time they brought him back in the Silver Age, like in the first two appearances in the Golden Age, he was basically just motivated by this desire to outwit Batman and prove he was the best. And he was basically motivated by boredom, because he'd made so much money as a carny. He was now rich, and with his scam puzzles and everything, and he decided it'd be fun to try to con Batman and fool him with his riddles and puzzles, and it didn't work out so well for him. Batman, caught him. The Riddler apparently dies at the end of the first story, falls into the river, and then his question mark floats off of his costume up to the surface. But then they actually do capture him in the second one. They bring him back in the Silver Age, and of course that issue was one of the ones that infamously was picked up by William Dozier when he was researching the character, and wound up becoming the first episode of the series. But yeah, that was the thing that really cemented the Riddler as being one of Batman's greatest enemies. Here he is with the question mark blaster, and he looks pretty cool holding that. He actually looks kind of menacing for a guy in a goofy green leotard who's pointing a 7-shaped ray gun. But yeah, the Riddler wound up becoming like one of the big four Batman villains because of that. And then the Batman movie that they made in the 60s, that featured, of course, the Joker, the Penguin, Catwoman, and the Riddler. So that was all four of their big four Batman villains. And he's one that like people seem kind of reluctant to use nowadays because it's tricky to come up with all those riddles. It's like so they tend to kind of avoid him. Like he's only on like a few episodes of Batman the Animated Series, for example, but he's popular enough that people always expect to see the Riddler. So what are you supposed to do? Not have the Riddler on there at all? That'd be kind of lame. So but yeah, he was one of two Batman villains that was in the Legion of Doom, because you had the Riddler and you had the Scarecrow. And as I talked about on the Filmation Riddler episode, they couldn't use most of the Batman villains because most of the Batman villains were being used on the New Adventures of Batman cartoon. So they were able to sneak the Riddler into the opening credits of that. But that's probably the main reason we didn't actually see a Riddler episode on the show. He just got a token appearance in the opening credits. Likewise, we only got the Riddler and the Scarecrow as members of the Legion of Doom, even though they were initially planning on having the Joker and Catwoman be members, and wound up not. So, uh, anyway, I think that's pretty much it. I think that's everything I have to say about the Riddler. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure that you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. I'm probably later tonight going to do a stream with Captain Half Fun. I don't know if that's going to be on his channel or my channel. I haven't figured that out yet. And that's if he's able to get back to me, because like I was kind of late getting to him. So it's kind of hard for me to plan stuff out because my schedule's so weird. But I'm trying my best. I really am. So, but the next episode of the unboxings proper, the next episode of the Super Friends unboxing, I think I'm gonna open up Lex Luthor, because the other figures in the set, like, is gonna be Sinestro and Green Lantern. I should probably open both of those back to back. And the two Batman figures I'm going to open up in the same episode, as I usually do when I have a Platinum Edition figure. I like to open up both of those at the same time, since it's essentially the same figure. Hell, these are essentially the same figure. I've got some Platinum Edition figures that are more different than these two are from each other. They share so many parts. But yeah, I'll open both of those Batman figures together, and then I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week. If the Captain Have Fun live stream does happen tonight, hopefully it will. Hopefully it'll get back to me. Hopefully I wasn't too late. I'll probably be opening this one on that, because he wanted to open that on the stream with me, and I'm like, okay, sure, that's fine. So that's why I've been delaying this bad boy, but I am looking forward to having him opened up. So anyway, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure, if you did, to like and subscribe and all the other fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the Riddler, both the character in general and this figure specifically, and the Super Friends version specifically. Bobby Wald says, I'm surprised you still have Batman trapped in a package. That guy can escape from anything. Yeah, well, I've just got so many Batmans. I've got lots of Batmans still in the package. Like, there's two of them over there, and one of them's the Adam West Batman, and he can escape from anything. This is the Year 2 Batman, and this is the Michael Keaton Batman. I've got a lot of Batman coming up. So if you're a Bat fan, as I am, you surely won't want to miss that. So anyway, but that's it for this episode. And I already mentioned I got the other two Batman figures, the Super Friends ones. So but they're coming. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. We will talk to you next time. Bye.